Hi there. In a previous posting on Professor Fred, I spoke about the long neck of giraffes. But what I didn't talk about was whether or not they have vocal cords and whether or not they make sounds. Now, today, I've invited a research biologist from the Austrian Institute of Science, Dr. Anton Baotíc, and he happens to be an expert in animal communication. So, welcome, Anton.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Fred.
Hi there. So the first question is, do they have vocal cords? And if not, how do they communicate? And if so, what kind of sounds do they make?
So for many years, it was thought that giraffes, that their neck is too long and that they're more adapted for respiration than for call production. But like other mammals, including us humans, giraffes do have a voice box, also called the larynx. So they fulfill basically the anatomic requirements to produce calls, and their voice box sits right in the throat, and it follows the same vocal production mechanism. So they are able to produce with these vocal cords in their voice box a different range, a range of different sounds, and they are known to produce grunts, snoring sounds, and often in situations when they are annoyed by something or when they are in a kind of alert or alarm mode. But they also produce humming vocalizations, and we don't know the function of these humming vocalizations yet. But what we know is that that the acoustic structure of these humming is quite complex, similar to other mammal vocalizations, and this hints that they potentially have a communicative function.
So do they use this humming a lot to talk to each other or snort and grunt, or how do they actually talk to each other?
So we actually don't really know for sure if they use vocalizations to communicate actively with each other. So these humming vocalizations, for example, were only recorded in a zoo environment, but we don't know the function of it yet.
So if one of the little babies is threatened, what does it do? Does it jump up and scream, or it just is quiet? How's its mom know it's in danger?
That's a very good point. So the bond between a giraffe mother and her calf is very strong. And if necessary, for example, when the calf gets separated from the mother, it might call. And there are some videos on YouTube, for example, that show that when a calf gets separated from the herd or the mother, it would produce a moo-like sound. And in other extreme situations, for example, in the wild, when lions are trying to attack the calf would also produce similar vocalizations. And if a giraffe mother notices that, it would try to kick the lion with the feet while growling loudly, for example.
Oh, wow. So when you're in the field and you're trying to record these vocalizations, how do you do it? I mean, what do you run around with a microphone chasing giraffe?
It is quite simple as you explained it. I have my microphone with me and my video camera, and I'm following the giraffes on foot. Depending on the reserve I'm in at, so sometimes I do rely on a vehicle if the reserve has lions.
So when you're out there in the field and you're listening to all these recordings, what is the most interesting sound or your most interesting experience trying to record sounds in giraffe?
It is kind of a mystery. Because so far, as I mentioned, the humming vocalizations that I recorded in the zoo environment, I did come across, to snoring sounds, bursting sounds, and these non-vocal sounds where they don't really use their vocal cords. So it is still a myth, to me, how they communicate actually with each other.
Now, sometimes when people study these sounds in the wild, they play the sounds to the animals to see how they react. Do you ever do any of those kinds of experiments?
So I did some preliminary experiments, both in the zoo environment and the wild, um, with actually very interesting observations. So I played back humming vocalization, particular humming vocalizations, because I was assuming that this humming has a communicative function due to its complex acoustic structure. And the giraffes were very, not, I wouldn't say anxious, but very curious. They would approach the direction of the sound that where I placed the speaker. They would scan the surroundings. I had similar observations in the wild as well.
Okay. And do you think that the work that you're doing can play a role in saving the giraffe?
So the fact is that giraffe numbers went down fast without even noticing it, and the population continues to decline if we don't act. And I hope that my behavioral research can provide some insights to raise awareness and potentially to help or to provide useful information for future conservation strategies.
So you've studied other animals too. So how do the recording of the giraffe, how does that compare to something like elephants and other animals you've worked with?
Yeah, so I became interested or ended up working with giraffes through a range of different animal species. As a young undergraduate student, I started studying animal acoustic communication, first in infant giant pandas, and then moved to African elephants. And African elephants are very social animals. They are known to produce these very low frequency rumbling vocalizations. They use these calls not only for short range communication, but also to communicate over long distances. And these calls are typically not audible to the human ear. And some also talk about the secret language of elephants. And this is where giraffes come into play because, in contrast to elephants, giraffes are considered mute. And the main reason is that they've never really been observed making any sound. So I guess that that's where the myth is coming from that giraffes are silent. And since there are some similarities in the social structure and the social life between elephants and giraffes, it was, I would say, automatically assumed that giraffes must make use of similar low frequency vocalizations to communicate with each other, but we just cannot hear it. And because I couldn't find any acoustic research visualizing or providing evidence of giraffe sounds, my inner scientist questioned this assumption, and that's how I became interested in studying giraffes.
So this is pretty cool. So when you're out there and you're trying to record something, you might not be hearing anything, and these giraffes are basically talking about, look at this guy following us around, but they're using the sound that we can't hear. Is
Um,
that a possibility then?
It is a possibility, but if you're using the right equipment, you cannot miss it. So if you're using microphones that are adapted for the to record these low frequencies, these infrasonic frequencies below 20 hertz, you will catch any vocalizations. And so far, I haven't.
If they're not making these sounds and they do have this complicated social structure, do you have any idea how they are coming together and moving apart and what's going on? Like you mentioned, the elephants are pretty obvious at this point. What about the giraffe? What are they doing?
That's the big question, and I don't really have an answer to that, but there is not only the acoustic communication channels, there's so many different sensory modalities. They could maybe use just visual communication, chemical communication, and in fact, they do use these communication channels, but maybe they're using different sensory modalities. So we could also speak of multimodal communication where different sensory modalities come into play.
I also suspect that they pick up a lot from the other animals that are around them. But I think
Mm,
it definitely plays a role in where they're going and what they're doing because they can see a lot. Plus, they probably hear a lot.
yeah, yeah.
And
Even if you don't find something, it helps you to look at other aspects, like as I mentioned, that they use maybe sounds not to
mhm.
communicate, but sounds from the environment to navigate their lives. Like, for example, everybody knows that oxpeckers, this bird species, sits on giraffes and they are for parasite removal, but they oxpeckers are very vocal as well. And if they spot potential danger, it would alert the giraffes. So, and that's also my observations from the field. And we use that to, stay more vigilant, screen the surroundings for potential danger. So everything is connected, basically.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Instead of looking at it in a vacuum. No, I think that's great. That's a neat find, by the way, about the oxpeckers.
It is. It is.
Something along those lines, because they definitely pay attention and they do hang around with them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some new research coming up.
So we still have a lot to learn about giraffe.
100%.
And thanks again for being like a guinea pig here, testing out our system. See what's up.
I think you're really all doing a great job. And you, Fred, you're doing a great thing, really. It's really cool.
Well, thanks a lot.
It's very informative,
Look forward to seeing what you can produce here. Not just on YouTube. This is cool, but yeah. Okay. Thanks a bunch then, and we'll be in touch.